Often, policy entrepreneurs assist in placing issues on the institutional agenda. A policy entrepreneur is anyone, legislators, lobbyists, agency officials, members of the public, journalists, who adamantly pushes an issue onto the agenda. Sometimes a legislator becomes a champion of a cause. Sometimes an individual takes on a problem, like Ralph Nader, who fought the car industry to require seat belts in all cars. Policies might originate from other sources, including the media, organized protesters, and the courts. Public opinion research suggests that the media cannot change the opinion of the public, but can set the agenda. That is, the media cannot tell the public how to think, but can tell the public what issues to think about. For example, a very important bill, the Telecommunication Act of 2014, received very little attention from the media, despite being widely influential. This act affected telephone service, radio, television, cable, and the internet, issues that involve the public every day. But yet discussion was absent from the media, and this absence removed it from public discussion. Protesters, however, are often discussed in the media. Protesters have some influence over policy. Although the more recent Occupy Wall Street movement yielded no significant results, protests during the 1960s, Martin Luther King's March on Washington, and protests against the Vietnam War were very successful. Finally, the Supreme Court has great policy influence. Carl E. Van Horn notes the following. It is sometimes said that courts implement policies made by other branches of government. But for many issues such as abortion, capital punishment, search and seizure, school prayer, and school desegregation, the opposite is true. The courts make policy, and other political institutions respond to their lead. When politicians are silent or ambiguous, judicial action involves more than just policy implementation. In fact, there may be no policy to implement until the courts act. Sometimes the Supreme Court waits for a case to be appealed from a lower court concerning a particular issue. Indeed, the justices may hint that a case regarding a certain issue should be appealed from a lower court, giving the Supreme Court a chance to rule on a particular issue, which will affect all laws regarding the issue, privacy, desegregation, etc. A court or justice who interprets the Constitution in a particular way to achieve a particular outcome is called a judicial activist. This counters judicial restraint, which entails a literal interpretation or textual of the Constitution. A judicial activist argues that the Constitution promotes liberal democracy. So any interpretation which advocates liberal democracy is consistent with the Constitution. For example, the Bill of Rights does not explicitly state that one has the right to an abortion. However, the Supreme Court bases the right to an abortion on the right to privacy. But the Bill of Rights does not explicitly state that one has the right to privacy. The Supreme Court argued that the Bill of Rights implicitly or indirectly guarantees the right to privacy, and so the right to an abortion. The court argued that freedom of religion, the First Amendment, freedom from quartering of soldiers, the Third Amendment, and the right from unreasonable search and seizure, the Fourth Amendment, and the right from self-incrimination, the Fifth Amendment, and the retention of other rights not mentioned in the Bill of Rights, the Ninth Amendment, all suggest people have the right to privacy, and so the right to an abortion. Many argue that the Supreme Court has become policymakers or politicians when their role is that of an appeals court and possibly as an interpreter of the Constitution. The court gave itself the power of judicial review. Marbury versus Madison.